When you think of Tolkien's Middle-earth, you think of epic landscapes, towering peaks, treacherous mountain passes. But what if I told you that much of this incredible terrain wasn't inspired by fiction, but by a real-world adventure? In 1911, a young J.R.R. Tolkien took a trip through the Swiss Alps. It was a journey that would change his life and the story of Middle-earth forever. In this video, we're going to follow Tolkien's footsteps through Switzerland and the Bernese Oberland and discover the incredible real-world locations that inspired some of the most iconic places in Middle-earth. From Rivendell to the Misty Mountains, this is the real-world journey that forged a fantasy legend. In July 1911, just before starting university at Oxford, Tolkien joined a walking group organised by the school of one of his friends. They took a boat across Lake Geneva, travelled to Interlaken and began a 300-mile journey through the Alps. In 1967, in a letter to his son, Tolkien said, "I am delighted that you have made the acquaintance of Switzerland, and of the very part that I once knew best, and which had the deepest effect on me. The Hobbit's journey from Rivendell to the other side of the Misty Mountains, including the glissade down the slithering stones into the pine woods, is based on my adventures in 1911. In this letter, and another in 1961, Tolkien links many of the locations in The Lord of the Rings to real-world places in Switzerland. Tolkien was hiking in a group that he later compared to being the same size as the party that travelled in The Hobbit. We know that mountain ponies were available for hire in Interlaken, the town they departed from, so it's even possible they had one of those with their group. From a distance, this walking party would have looked just like the Fellowship as it headed south from Rivendell. Tolkien described his journey like this: "We went on foot, carrying great packs, practically all the way from Interlaken, mainly by mountain paths, to Lauterbrunnen, and so to Murren, and eventually to the head of the Lauterbrunnental in a wilderness of moraines. We slept rough, the menfolk, often in hayloft or cowbyre, since we were walking by map and avoided roads and never booked, and after a meagre breakfast, fed ourselves in the open." One of the first places they came was the Lauterbrunnen Valley. And if you're thinking it looks familiar, that's not a coincidence. With its dramatic cliffs, lush valley bottom, and waterfalls falling from all around, it's likely this place inspired Tolkien's vision of Rivendell. This place closely resembles Tolkien's drawings of this hidden valley of the elves. It has more than 70 waterfalls cascading over its vertical cliffs, with the towering white peak of the Jungfrau overhead. Few places on the planet feel more Tolkien-esque than this. The clues that this is the inspiration for Rivendell are all around. Take the trees. Tolkien says that Rivendell is lined with beeches and oaks. At 800 metres above sea level, Lauterbrunnen still has the deciduous trees in the valley bottom, while the pine trees dominate the slopes above. Perhaps the strongest piece of evidence might come from the river that runs through Rivendell. Tolkien says that in the common speech it's known as the Loudwater. It seems possible that's a slight mistranslation of the name Lauterbrunnen, but in Old High German, Lauterbrunnen translates as something closer to clear water. The Elvish name for the river through Rivendell is the Brunnen, which is so close to the Brunnen of Lauterbrunnen that it seems beyond coincidence. From Lauterbrunnen, Tolkien and his party hiked up to the mountain village of Murren, and then to the Obersteinberg Mountain Inn, where he signed the guest book. This beautiful inn is at the very, very, very end of the valley before a wall of mountains. It could easily be described as the last homely house. We must then have gone eastward over the two Scheidegger to Grindelwald, with Eiger and Mönch on our right, and eventually reached Meiringen. I left the view of Jungfrau with deep regret. Eternal snow, etched as it seemed against eternal sunshine, and the Silberhorn, sharp against dark blue. The Silvertine of my dreams. This was the journey Tolkien took to leave the Lauterbrunnen Valley behind. He hiked up, through Kleine Scheidegg, past Grindelwald, and out into the valleys beyond. This quote makes it clear that at least one of the mountains of Moria has concrete roots here in the Swiss Alps. The Silberhorn is a secondary peak of the Jungfrau. It's by no means one of the most famous mountains in the region. If Tolkien himself hadn't made the link, we would never have known. This is the peak where Gandalf the Grey defeats the Balrog and becomes Gandalf the White. Given that the Silberhorn has such a direct relation to these mountains, is it possible that the other mountains of Moria can be found here? The Eiger, the Munch and the Jungfrau are the three peaks that dominate this region, and it's been suggested that they could be the inspiration for some of Tolkien's peaks, but there's no direct evidence linking them. Some have suggested that the Rottelhorn could be the inspiration for Tolkien's Caradhras. When Tolkien was hiking around Murren and staying at the Obersteinberg Inn, the Silberhorn and Jungfrau tower above, with the Rottelhorn to the right. These three mountains form a chain that could perhaps have inspired the mountains of Moria. There are even mines in the base of the Rottelhorn, something Tolkien may have seen as he walked along the valley floor. And what about Moria itself? Could it have roots in the Swiss mountains? When Tolkien was here in 1911, a huge engineering project was taking place. A 4-mile tunnel was being excavated inside the Eiger, taking a railway up to the Jungfrau Joch, a saddle peak of the Jungfrau. The tunnel had already been under construction for 20 years by the time Tolkien arrived. It delves into the side of the Eiger at Kleine Scheidegg, a place that Tolkien mentions walking past. It's entirely possible that he saw the tunnel himself, or heard of the works, and used that as his inspiration for the mines of Moria. He once said that the beauty of these Swiss landscapes made a deep impression on him, and stayed with him throughout his life. He never returned to Switzerland himself, but he brought it back to life in his stories. If you've ever dreamed of standing in Rivendell, crossing the Misty Mountains or visiting the Hobbits, you need look no further than this corner of Switzerland. Thanks for joining me through this journey of Tolkien's inspirations. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video.